imagine this. You're fast asleep, right? And suddenly, this massive boom just rattles your windows, shakes the whole house, wakes up the entire neighborhood. You jump online, check the news, maybe the USGS site. Nothing. No earthquake, no explosion reported, just silence.
Yeah, that's deeply unsettling.
Or, how about this? A really violent storm passes through. You go outside afterwards. Pavement's pretty much dry, but scattered all over your driveway are fish. Dozens of them flopping around, and you're nowhere near a lake or a river.
Right. These moments, they're more than just weird weather, aren't they?
Exactly. They're not just oddities that make us, scratch our heads for a second.
Yeah.
These are moments that literally yank us out of our ordinary lives. And they plunge us headfirst into something extraordinary. They demand our attention, and honestly, they challenge everything we thought we knew about how the world works.
And what's really fascinating, from my perspective anyway, is how these events instantly trigger these fundamental human impulses.
Yeah.
Well, from an evolutionary standpoint, surprising environmental cues demand an explanation. It's hardwired. We have this primal drive to find a cause for things.
We need things to make sense.
Exactly. A hunger for a coherent narrative, a story that fits, and also a really deep social need to make meaning together. We talk about it, we share theories.
Right, whether it's blaming the weather or something more out there.
Precisely. Whether that meaning comes from ancient folklore, gods being angry, or rigorous scientific inquiry, or even modern conspiracy theories online. The story we build around it often feels just as vital as finding the actual verifiable solution, sometimes maybe even more so.
So that's what we're doing today. We're taking a deep dive into true crime, mysteries, and unexplained phenomena, focusing specifically on these strange natural phenomena and anomalies.
Feels fascinating.
Our goal is to really unpack the most important bits of knowledge from, a whole stack of sources, historical accounts, scientific papers, eyewitness reports, things that sit right at that crossroads of wonder, maybe a little bit of dread, solid science, and pure storytelling.
A potent mix.
Definitely. We'll be looking at history, the psychological impact, why these things still matter today, and crucially, how we can try to separate myth from reality. We'll use forensic analysis, atmospheric science reports, marine biology, whatever the sources give us. So as you join us today, I guess the big question for you listening right now is, what is it about the unknown that draws you in? We all seem compelled by these mysteries, don't we? Let's try and unpack these layers together.
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's start by really digging into this enduring allure, this pull of the unexplained. I mean, those opening examples, the boons, the fish rain, they really do hammer home how these rare occurrences just shatter our everyday routines, don't they?
Absolutely. They puncture the mundane.
They force us to stop, look up, question things, and make us pause and wonder about the very fabric of the world around us.
They do. And that jolt they provide, that sudden break from the expected, that's precisely why they're so captivating. Humans, fundamentally, we prefer cause over just random chance.
We hate randomness.
We really do. Our brains are basically wired to connect the dots, to find reasons, even when none are immediately obvious. So when an anomaly appears, something totally outside the norm,
Yeah.
the mind instinctively, automatically seeks to create a narrative around it. And this isn't just, idle curiosity. It's driven by these deeply ingrained cognitive biases. Things like patternicity.
Patternicity. Finding patterns where maybe there aren't any.
Exactly. Our tendency to see meaningful patterns in random noise or ambiguous data, and also agency detection.
Agency detection.
Yeah.
Like assuming someone or something caused it?
Precisely. Attributing events to intentional agents, a person, a spirit, a hidden force, even if there isn't one. This powerful cognitive push, it leads people toward finding these meaningful, often quite elaborate explanations.
Even if the real cause is just complicated physics. Or pure luck.
Or pure luck, or a complex system interaction that's hard to grasp immediately. It's almost like our brains find saying, deeply unsatisfying, isn't it?
Absolutely. We are narrative machines, hardwired to create stories. And a simple, or it was just chance, feels wrong, almost intolerable to our systems.
It's a feature, not a bug, arguably, from an evolutionary perspective. Helped us spot predators, maybe. But it can definitely lead us down some strange paths today.
And thinking about that need for explanation, it brings up the other side of it. Fear. It's this incredible duality, right? The same unknown thing that sparks intense curiosity can also trigger this deep primal dread. How do those two impulses, the thrill of discovery and that shiver of terror, really battle it out inside us?
Well, that dual response is absolutely critical to understanding our fascination. Psychologically, these anomalies, these breaks in reality, they trigger both curiosity and significant threat responses simultaneously.
Okay.
The sheer uncertainty, the not knowing, can stimulate adrenaline. That rush commands intense attention, which, is great for news headlines.
Makes for a good story.
Exactly. Captivating storytelling fuels documentaries, podcasts like this one. But, and this is a big but, for the people who directly experience the trauma of these events, like that home-shaking boom you described, or finding all your livestock mysteriously dead one morning.
Yeah, that's different.
It's profoundly different. For them, the psychological impact can be far more serious, deeply distressing. It's not just an interesting puzzle, it's a reality that can leave lasting anxiety, real trauma.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So, given all that internal conflict, curiosity versus fear, how do our existing beliefs, the things we already think are true about the world, how do they shape what we actually see and how we react in these moments? Does our worldview act like a filter?
Oh, absolutely. A very powerful one. Our existing beliefs, our worldview, act as this potent lens through which we process ambiguous information. It's almost unavoidable.
So, for example,
Well, individuals who are already predisposed to believe in the paranormal or maybe lean towards conspiratorial thinking, they are significantly more likely to interpret these anomalies as intentional or supernatural or the result of some hidden, often sinister plot. They might see a ghost or aliens or a secret government experiment.
even when there might be a perfectly mundane explanation available.
Even when presented with conventional, evidence-based explanations, yes. Their default interpretation leans towards the extraordinary. It really highlights how deeply ingrained our worldviews are. They shape our perception of reality, often before we've even consciously started analyzing the evidence. We tend to interpret the world through the stories we already hold dear.
That's a powerful insight. It really makes you think. So let me put this to you, our listener. Imagine an unexplained event happened right in your community. Maybe a strange, persistent humming sound only some people can hear, or weird lights in the sky over town. How do you think you might react initially? Would your first instinct be to seek out a scientific explanation? Check official sources, maybe look for meteorological data, contact local authorities? Or would your mind lean towards something more mysterious? Would you talk to neighbors, share theories on local Facebook groups, maybe explore more speculative explanations online? It's a question that gets right to the heart of how we each individually grapple with the unknown, isn't it?
It really does.
But what's truly remarkable, as you hinted at earlier, is how far back these accounts go. This isn't just a modern thing fueled by the internet. These strange occurrences seem to echo through history.
Oh, absolutely. That's a very insightful point. They aren't new at all. In fact, the deep history is quite astounding when you start digging. Reports of what we now call animal rain, frogs or fish falling from the sky.
Yeah.
Or mysterious lights seen at night. Or deep thunder-like booms when there are no storms. These go back centuries, millennia even.
Really? Millennia?
Yeah, travelers, chroniclers, historians across vastly different cultures and continents, they meticulously recorded accounts of animals seemingly falling from the heavens, or strange glowing lights in the night, or unexplained fires, long before we had modern scientific instruments, or, the scientific method as we understand it today.
Yeah.
This extensive historical record, it powerfully demonstrates the timeless nature of these human encounters with the unexplained. It shows our ancestors were just as perplexed, just as fascinated, and just as driven to create meaning out of the chaos as we are today.
And then moving forward a bit, in the 18th and 19th centuries, we see this explosion of intellectual curiosity, the Enlightenment, and beyond. Was that the moment we really started approaching these things with a more, let's say, systematic scientific lens, even if the early theories were maybe a bit off?
That's a very good way to put it. That period, the 18th and 19th centuries, truly marked a pivotal shift towards rational inquiry, a kind of nascent scientific approach.
So less magic, more mechanism.
Increasingly, yes. Natural philosophers during the Enlightenment weren't just passively observing, they were actively, systematically cataloging odd weather phenomena, luminous events like St. Elmo's fire, ball lightning, trying to understand their properties, classify them.
Try to find patterns.
Exactly. And this era also saw the very beginnings of a kind of forensic curiosity about strange deaths, which interestingly later fed directly into the enduring lurid lore of spontaneous human combustion, or SHC.
Ah, right. SHC. We'll definitely need to unpack that one later.
Very well. But yes, even though the initial explanations back then were often rudimentary, sometimes wildly speculative by our standards today, invoking things like humors or static electricity, it laid the essential groundwork. It was the first real systematic attempt to understand the natural world, even its weirdest aspects, through observation and reasoned thought, rather than relying solely on superstition or divine explanations.
Okay, so speaking of historical oddities, the phrase Seneca Guns, it just sounds so evocative, like something from a historical thriller. Where does that term actually come from? And what does it tell us about how these local mysteries take root and become part of a place's identity?
The term Seneca Guns is a fantastic piece of local lore, isn't it? And it's a perfect example of how specific place names get attached to these enduring mysteries. It dates back to 19th century North America, specifically referring to these persistent booming sounds heard around the Finger Lakes in New York State, particularly Seneca Lake.
Ah, okay, so named after the lake.
Precisely. Early settlers, prominent writers like James Fenimore Cooper even, they described these unexplained noises in their accounts and journals. And over time, these distinctive local names like Seneca Guns or sometimes Barazol Guns in India or Mist Poofers in coastal Europe, they become deeply attached to these place-based mysteries.
They become part of the local brand almost.
Exactly. They get embedded in the regional consciousness, persisting in local folklore for generations. They become part of the very fabric of a community's identity, a unique quirk that sets their place apart. They often evolve into these cherished local legends. There's this charming story about a local historian near Seneca Lake who absolutely swore the booms were the ghosts of Revolutionary War cannons still firing.
Wow. That really shows how deep these stories run.
It does. It shows how deeply these tales become woven into a community's self-perception, even when, or perhaps especially when, science offers a less romantic explanation.
That's a wonderful example. And this enduring fascination, this need to explain, it's not new, as you said, it goes way back.
Yeah.
Let's maybe trace that progression a bit more formally. How has our understanding, or attempts at understanding, evolved over time?
We can definitely trace a clear progression, a kind of timeline of curiosity and developing science. It really showcases humanity's relentless quest for answers when faced with the baffling.
Okay, lay it out for us.
All right, so if we go back to the 17th, 18th centuries, you find chronicles and explorers' narratives across Europe just filled with multiple reports of these so-called rains of frogs, fish, even snakes sometimes.
Widespread accounts.
Very widespread. These baffling accounts show how common and perplexing these phenomena were to earlier societies, and of course, often attributed to divine intervention, bad omens, or even witchcraft.
Makes sense for the time.
Then fast forward to the mid-1800s. By this point, these mysterious booming noises, the Seneca Guns and their equivalents, had accumulated enough regional accounts that a major American writer like James Fenimore Cooper actually mentions the lake gun in his fiction.
So it's entering popular culture.
Exactly. It shows how these phenomena were moving beyond simple reportage into the collective imagination, into literature. That's a significant step.
Okay, what's next?
Late 1800s, early 1900s. This is when the medical and legal communities really start to seriously document and debate cases of spontaneous human combustion, or SHC.
The early attempts at forensics we mentioned.
Yeah, right. But the early explanations were often quite speculative. They invoked ancient medical theories about bodily humors being out of balance or static electricity or other, frankly, occult-tinged explanations. It really highlights the profound lack of modern forensic understanding at the time. You see a scientific community grappling with something it just doesn't have the tools to properly explain yet.
Fascinating. Then the 20th century.
Mid-1900s, this era marks a really significant turning point. Forensic science and atmospheric science mature dramatically. This leads to plausible, natural explanations for many previously mysterious incidents.
Like SHC.
Yes. For example, dropped cigarettes or embers from fireplaces were increasingly identified as common external ignition sources in many suspected SHC cases. This shifted the understanding away from mysterious internal ignition towards external causes, and the wick effect we'll discuss later.
Wow.
And another, maybe lesser known but incredibly significant event happened happened in the 1970s. A National Geographic team investigated Honduras's famous annual Lluvia de Peces, the rain of fish.
They went there.
They did. And this investigation really transformed what was purely a local legend into a subject of modern ethnographic and scientific curiosity. It marked a moment where systematic scientific inquiry was finally brought to bear on a deeply ingrained cultural phenomenon, moving it from the realm of pure myth towards something potentially explainable, even if still debated.
Wow. And now, the 21st century.
21st century. Today, our monitoring capabilities are just vastly increased. We have global seismograph networks, comprehensive marine mammal stranding reporting systems, incredibly detailed satellite imagery, sophisticated weather modeling.
So we can see more, measure more.
Exactly. This allows scientists to revisit old phenomena with unprecedented amounts of data, yet many anomalous reports still remain surprisingly resistant to easy classification. The mystery persists in some cases, highlighting the ongoing frontiers of science.
And institutions are taking notice now, too.
Absolutely. Notably, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, now formally defines and investigates something called unusual mortality events, or UMEs for marine life. This demonstrates a formal scientific recognition and an institutional approach to tracking and understanding these types of previously unexplained mass die-offs. It shows a clear shift from mere curiosity to systematic, scientific surveillance and investigation.
It's incredible, really, to think about how centuries of these reports passed down through generations, written about, and now amplified instantly by modern media. How all that has shaped our collective imagination. These stories, they bridge that gap between ancient fears of the unknown and our modern scientific curiosity, don't they? They make us all wonder, what else is out there, and what can we learn from it all?
Fundamental question.
So that's the historical arc, the journey through time. But let's bring it back to the individual. What does all this mean for us, psychologically? Why are these anomalies so incredibly compelling to our brains? Why do they draw us in with such force?
Well, it really does come back to that fundamental wiring we discussed earlier. Humans have this innate, deeply ingrained preference for cause over simple chance. Our brains are essentially narrative-making machines. We need stories.
Right.
So an anomaly, something outside the norm, unexpected, it automatically triggers a search for a coherent story and explanation. And this search is heavily influenced by those cognitive biases, like patternicity and agency detection that we touched upon.
Remind us again, patternicity is seeing patterns.
In randomness.
Yeah.
And agency detection is attributing events to an intentional actor, a who or a what.
Got it.
So our minds almost instinctively crave that who or what behind the why. This is why a random, unexplained boom might immediately lead someone to theorize about a hidden cause, a secret military operation, maybe even something supernatural.
Rather than just accepting it might be, say, a distant quarry blast bouncing off an inversion layer.
Exactly. Or a small, unrecorded meteor exploding high up. Those explanations often feel less satisfying, less complete, than one involving intention or hidden forces. It's our brain's default way of trying to make sense of a potentially chaotic and unpredictable world.
Yeah, and it's not just about understanding, is it?
Yeah.
As you were explaining earlier, there's that really powerful dual nature to our response. The unknown can be utterly terrifying, yet we seem irresistibly drawn to it. What is it about that paradox that holds us so captive?
It's a profound paradox, isn't it? And it's key. Anomalies trigger both powerful curiosity and strong threat responses within us, often at the same time.
Okay.
The thrill of the unknown, the sheer mystery of it, can stimulate adrenaline, sharpen our attention, which, as we said, makes for incredibly gripping news stories, compelling documentaries, great entertainment. It grabs us. But for those directly experiencing these events, that same stimulus can be a source of real trauma, deep anxiety. It transforms what might be a fascinating oddity for an outsider into a genuinely distressing personal ordeal. The ambiguity itself, the not knowing what happened or if it will happen again, is often the most unsettling element.
And our existing beliefs, those mental models we already have about how the world works, they act as a very powerful filter in these moments, right?
An incredibly powerful filter. Individuals who are already predisposed to paranormal beliefs or perhaps hold strong conspiratorial worldviews, they are significantly more likely to interpret ambiguous anomalies as being intentional or supernatural in origin. This isn't just a minor quirk. It really showcases how deeply ingrained worldviews can shape our perception of reality. It often leads us to reinforce what we already believe rather than objectively seeking alternative, perhaps more mundane explanations. We tend to see what we expect to see, even or maybe especially, when faced with the truly unexpected.
So that's the individual psychological response. But what happens when these unexplained events ripple outwards? How do they start to shape our communities, our societies? Can they actually become part of a collective identity?
Oh, absolutely they can. They often become woven into the fabric of a community. Communities frequently cohere around shared interpretations of local anomalies, especially those that seem unique to their region or history.
How does that manifest?
In some really remarkable ways. Sometimes through formal rituals or local festivals, like the annual Lluvia de Peces celebration in Yoro, Honduras, we mentioned, that's become a cornerstone of their local culture and identity.
Wow.
Or sometimes even local economies can become subtly or not so subtly built around the spectacle of a particular mystery. Think Loch Ness, for example. These events can provide a shared narrative, a shared story that binds people together, sometimes for generations. They offer a sense of unique place, a shared collective experience that sets them apart.
And in today's world, this hyper-connected world, how do these stories spread and morph? It feels like media amplification, especially social media, plays a huge, maybe even distorting role now.
It absolutely does. Modern social media has dramatically accelerated the spread of rumor, speculation, and interpretation. It creates these persistent online case files, collections of anecdotes, videos, theories that can live on indefinitely, often long after credible scientific explanations have emerged and been published.
The explanation doesn't go viral, but the mystery does.
Often, yes. Viral footage, even if it's blurry, incomplete, or easily misinterpreted, can quickly entrench a certain symbolism in the public consciousness. A mysterious boom shared instantly can rapidly become accepted as evidence of a missile test or secret aircraft, regardless of atmospheric data. Or a few fish found after a storm becomes definitive proof of a miraculous rain of fish, regardless of nearby overflowing ponds or overturned trucks.
The initial narrative sticks.
Exactly. The initial, often more sensational narrative frequently sticks because it's emotionally compelling, easily shareable, and fits pre-existing patterns of belief or suspicion. Later corrections or nuanced explanations struggle to compete with that initial viral momentum.
And what does that do to trust? Trust in official sources.
That's a critical societal impact. When official sources, scientists, government agencies, emergency services are slow to respond or seem dismissive or worse, are completely absent from the conversation, well, grassroots narratives inevitably rush in to fill that information vacuum.
Nature abhors a vacuum, information abhors one too.
Precisely. Repeated unexplained events in a community can have two opposing effects. They can either erode public confidence in experts and authorities, fueling skepticism and conspiracy theories, or conversely, they can actually increase public demand for a more rigorous scientific inquiry, for better monitoring, for transparency from institutions. It creates this really complex dynamic push and pull between official explanations and unofficial narratives, shaping public discourse and trust in profound ways.
It's really something to ponder, isn't it?
Yeah.
So again, thinking about you listening. If something unexplained happened in your neighborhood tomorrow, maybe a series of strange, localized tremors that don't register on seismographs, or an unusual persistent fog, would your first move be to seek out official sources? Call the city, check university geology departments, look for NOAA reports. Or would you perhaps turn first to community forums, social media groups, see what your neighbors are saying, share speculations? It's a choice many of us might face. And our individual inclinations really do say a lot about how we personally approach the unknown.
A revealing thought experiment.
Now, moving into the present-day impacts, it's not just history or psychology. These events have real, tangible consequences right now. And what's truly fascinating, maybe even alarming, is how some of these strange phenomena are increasingly being recognized not just as isolated curiosities, but as crucial signals for our planet's health.
That's a critical distinction to make, yes. And it's arguably the most urgent insight we can take from studying these things today. Mass die-offs, for instance, and the increasing frequency of what NOAA calls unusual mortality events, or UMEs, among birds, fish, marine mammals.
We're seeing more reports of these, aren't we?
We are, and these are far from being just curiosities anymore. They are often directly linked to critical, large-scale environmental issues. Things like accelerating climate shifts, causing heat stress or changing currents, harmful algal blooms or HABs releasing toxins, widespread disease outbreaks often exacerbated by environmental stress, and various other anthropogenic, meaning human-caused stressors like pollution, habitat loss, or bycatch from fishing.
So the mystery is less about what happened and more about why it's happening more often.
Exactly. The most profound insight from today's mass animal die-offs is that many have ceased being mysteries in the traditional sense. They are now unequivocally recognized by scientists as our planet's urgent distress signals. They're direct indicators of escalating climate change impacts, widespread pollution, ecosystem disruption, and emerging diseases.
So they have real consequences.
Immense consequences, real ecological impacts, significant economic losses for fisheries and tourism, and even potential food security concerns.
Yeah.
NOAA and numerous recent peer-reviewed studies explicitly highlight a documented, statistically significant rise in these mass die-offs, and they correlate directly with these environmental stressors. The unexplained in this context has tragically become a grim, quantifiable metric of environmental degradation, demanding immediate, serious attention, not just detached curiosity.
And yet these stories are everywhere in the media, aren't they? Documentaries, podcasts, viral posts on social media, they absolutely capture our imaginations. How does that constant media presence shape our understanding, especially when, as you say, the stakes for our environment are so incredibly high?
Well, strange natural phenomena undeniably fuel a lucrative and attention-grabbing content industry. Let's be honest about that. Across all forms of media, these stories get clicks, views, listeners.
Mystery cells.
Mystery cells. And this interplay significantly shapes modern myth-making. It provides fresh, compelling narratives for what seems like an insatiable audience appetite for the weird and unexplained. However, it also raises some really important ethical issues, such as the delicate balance between, on one hand, sensationalizing things like mass die-offs purely for engagement, for the shock value, and on the other hand, responsibly reporting on what are often genuine ecological emergencies that demand serious scientific attention, public awareness, and policy action.
So the spectacle can overshadow the substance.
Precisely. When the spectacle overshadows the science, when a strange event becomes just another piece of viral entertainment, we risk missing the vital calls to action embedded within it. We risk obscuring the underlying, often human-driven causes that desperately need addressing.
So do these events, this public fascination, actually lead to concrete changes? Do they translate into real-world impact, policy shifts? Or does it mostly just remain in the realm of discussion, wonder, and entertainment?
No, they absolutely can and often do lead to concrete changes. Take unusual mortality events, the UMEs again. When NOAA officially declares a UME, that directly triggers specific responses from wildlife management agencies at federal and state levels. It mandates investigations, it requires monitoring. These events influence fisheries regulations, sometimes leading to emergency closures of fishing grounds or changes in quotas to protect struggling populations.
Yes, there are mechanisms in place.
There are. And importantly, public pressure, often generated by those widely shared anomalous reports, especially ones amplified by traditional and social media, can significantly accelerate research funding. It can push politicians and agencies to act faster, to allocate more resources. It can drive significant policy changes. So, yes, public fascination and concern can be translated into real-world action, demonstrating a powerful link between what initially appears as just a strange mystery and tangible environmental governance.
That's actually quite hopeful. It makes you think, doesn't it? The next time you see a news report about, say, thousands of birds falling from the sky or a beach covered in dead fish, will you view it as just a bizarre curiosity, something weird that happened over there? Or will you see it as a potential critical signal about our shared environment, prompting you to ask, maybe dig a little deeper? What does this really mean for the bigger picture? What's the underlying cause here? Our understanding, our framing of these events can profoundly shift our perspective and potentially even our actions.
A crucial shift in perspective.
Okay, let's turn now to really unpacking some of these specific, baffling phenomena that keep cropping up. Let's deconstruct them a bit, starting with maybe one of the most chilling and persistent myths out there: spontaneous human combustion. SHC.
Ah, yes, SHC. Stuff from nightmares.
Absolutely. We've all heard the stories, seen the supposed photos, people just igniting from within, burning intensely, often leaving just ashes and maybe a leg or foot, while the room around them, the chair they were sitting in, is barely scorched. It seems utterly impossible. What does actual science reveal when it investigates these truly terrifying scenes?
The myth is incredibly powerful, isn't it? The idea that a human being can just spontaneously ignite from within for no apparent external cause, burning down to ash while leaving their surroundings virtually untouched. It's a truly horrific image, a terrifying prospect that has understandably fueled countless horror stories and urban legends for centuries.
It defies logic.
It seems to. But what forensic science truly reveals about these cases, often labeled spontaneous human combustion, is, in its own way, just as chilling, but for different reasons. It's not about internal magic. It's often a horrific lesson in basic physics and chemistry.
Okay, explain that.
Let's take a classic type of case, often cited. Maybe a mid-20th century house fire involving an elderly individual, perhaps someone who was a heavy smoker or drinker, maybe less mobile. The scene described is often that classic picture. The torso almost completely consumed by fire, reduced to ash, yet furniture very near the body, maybe just inches away, is surprisingly intact, maybe just a bit heat damaged or soot covered.
The exact scenario people think of.
Exactly, and early headlines, local papers, would inevitably scream, "spontaneous combustion." But when modern forensic science reanalyzes these cold cases or investigates new ones with better tools, they don't find evidence of internal ignition. Instead, they meticulously piece together a likely and tragically mundane chain of events.
Such as
A dropped cigarette, an ember from a pipe, maybe falling asleep too close to a heater or open flame. A small external ignition source ignites the person's clothing or nearby flammable material like a blanket.
Okay, so an accident. But why the intense localized burning?
That's the key part. Then the victim's own body fat, especially if they were overweight or if certain metabolic conditions were present, begins to melt and soak into the clothing or upholstery. This saturated material then acts precisely like the wick of a candle.
The wick effect.
Exactly, the wick effect. The body's own subcutaneous fat becomes the fuel source, and the clothing or care stuffing acts as the wick, sustaining a slow, low-temperature but very persistent, localized, smoldering burn.
Slow and low, but for a long time.
Potentially for hours. And often, limited oxygen in the room, combined with these slow burn conditions, means the fire doesn't rapidly spread outwards. It consumes the fuel source, the body, very thoroughly, but doesn't generate enough radiant heat quickly enough to ignite nearby objects that aren't directly in contact or soaked in the rendered fat. This creates that incredibly eerie, highly localized scene of near-total bodily destruction next to relatively untouched surroundings.
So it's not theory, they've tested this.
Oh, yes. This isn't mere speculation. Forensic experts and researchers have conducted comparative experiments, often using animal carcasses wrapped in cloth, and have successfully reproduced these exact burning patterns. They've demonstrated how an external ignition source combined with body fat and flammable materials can create the conditions attributed to SHC. This provides strong evidence-based support that undercuts the notion of some mysterious internal spontaneous ignition. The real shock isn't the supernatural, it's how a relatively simple, explainable, albeit gruesome process can create a scene so visually terrifying and counterintuitive that it convinces people of the impossible.
That's a truly startling revelation. It completely flips the narrative from supernatural horror to, well, tragic accident explained by science. It shows the real power of careful forensic investigation. Okay, moving beyond individual tragedies, let's connect this back to the bigger picture. Another common fear or interpretation is that mass animal deaths signify something sinister or supernatural, maybe a warning from angry gods or even, alien interference.
Right, that's another widespread myth, or perhaps a default assumption for some, that every instance of a mass die-off, particularly if it involves multiple species dying simultaneously or in large numbers, must indicate supernatural anger, a government conspiracy, or some form of extraterrestrial intervention. It feels like it should mean something big and mysterious.
But the reality?
The reality, uncovered by ecological science and wildlife pathology, is usually far more grounded, though often no less concerning from an environmental perspective. As we discussed earlier, many, if not most, of these events are entirely explainable by a range of natural or increasingly human-influenced factors.
Like the algal blooms.
Exactly. Harmful algal blooms, or HABs, are a major culprit. These blooms produce potent natural poisons, biotoxins that can rapidly accumulate in the water or in the food chain, decimating fish populations, poisoning birds that eat the fish, or even sickening marine mammals.
What else?
Other common causes include specific disease outbreaks, sometimes novel viruses or bacteria sweeping through a population. Extreme heat stress due to heat waves, both on land and in water, is becoming more frequent. Hypoxia, meaning dangerously low oxygen levels in water, often caused by nutrient runoff leading to algal decay, creates dead zones. Then there's direct pollution, like chemical spills or pesticide runoff. And other anthropogenic disruptions, like mass entanglement in fishing gear for marine mammals or birds colliding with structures.
So a whole range of explainable, if worrying, causes.
A whole range. Now, that's not to say every mass die-off is immediately understood. Events involving multiple unrelated species dying at the exact same time, or those where no obvious cause like a pollutant or disease is found immediately, do remain genuinely puzzling sometimes and absolutely warrant thorough, rapid investigation.
But the trend.
But the overall trend, confirmed by recent meta-analyses and tracking efforts like NOAA's UME program, shows a clear increase in the frequency and severity of recorded mass die-offs over recent decades. And this increase is strongly tied to multiple, often interacting environmental stressors, climate change, pollution, habitat degradation, not to supernatural forces. In many ways, these aren't divine warnings anymore. They're quantifiable data points charting our planet's distress.
That puts a very different and frankly more alarming spin on it. Okay, let's switch gears to sound. What about those mysterious booming sounds that have puzzled communities for generations? The Seneca Guns we talked about earlier. Are those paranormal cannon shots, echoes from the past, or maybe secret government tests?
The myth surrounding things like the Seneca Guns is certainly captivating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Paranormal cannon fire echoing from history, secret military aircraft breaking the sound barrier undetected, maybe even underground explosions from hidden bases. The speculation runs wild.
It does.
But the reality, as scientific inquiry has painstakingly shown over the years, is far more complex and actually more scientifically interesting. Seneca Guns and similar phenomena reported worldwide under different names isn't one single mysterious thing. It's almost certainly a collection of distinct, unrelated causes that all happen to produce a similar effect. A loud, low-frequency booming sound, which then get grouped together under a common, evocative local label.
A portfolio of phenomena, you call it.
Exactly. It's a portfolio. Coastal communities, lakeside towns, even some inland areas have reported these loud, unexplained booms for generations. And scientists have investigated using various tools. In some specific instances, researchers have successfully correlated certain recorded booms with shallow seismic events, basically, small, localized earthquakes happening near the surface that generate audible rumblings that travel through the ground or air.
So mini quakes sometimes.
Sometimes, yes. In other cases, particularly near coasts or large bodies of water, atmospheric ducting is considered a likely culprit. This is where specific temperature layers in the atmosphere act like a channel, bending sound waves and allowing sounds like distant thunder, sonic booms from aircraft far offshore, or even large industrial explosions or quarry blasts to travel much, much further than they normally would, arriving unexpectedly in a distant location.
Sound traveling in weird ways.
Precisely. And a significant academic effort back in 2019 did a deep dive, comparing local witness reports of booms along the Carolina coast with a whole array of sensor data seismometers, infrasound detectors, weather data. What they found was crucial. Many, perhaps most of the reported booms had no clear seismic origin.
So not earthquakes in those cases.
Not earthquakes, strongly pointing towards atmospheric sources. This could include meteorological ducting, as mentioned, but also potentially things like meteor airbursts, small meteors exploding high in the atmosphere, which can create loud sonic booms that reach the ground, or even complex interactions of ocean waves in certain conditions. Or maybe still unidentified industrial or military sources whose sound is being ducted.
So lots of possibilities.
A whole range of possibilities. The crucial takeaway is that Seneca Guns is likely a catch-all term for this portfolio of different phenomena. The persistent mystery lies not in some single, undiscovered paranormal source, but in the inherent ambiguity and the challenge of definitively identifying the precise cause for each specific incident, especially when the source might be distant or fleeting.
That makes sense. It's less satisfying than one big answer, maybe, but more scientifically plausible. Okay, last one for this section. The idea of fish literally raining from the sky. It sounds utterly impossible, straight out of a tall tale or maybe the Bible. What's the real story behind animal rain, like the famous Lluvia de Peces in Honduras?
The myth is certainly vivid, isn't it? Fish, frogs, sometimes even stranger things, literally falling from the stratosphere as if poured from some celestial bucket. It's a truly fantastical image, deeply embedded in folklore across many cultures. But the reality, while still quite remarkable when it happens, is generally grounded in known, documented meteorological and sometimes terrestrial mechanisms.
Okay, so how can fish end up falling from the sky?
The primary scientific explanation, especially for fish or frogs appearing after storms, involves waterspouts. These are essentially tornadic vortices, columns of rotating air that form over bodies of water, lakes, rivers, the ocean.
Mini tornadoes over water.
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
These powerful updrafts within the waterspout can suck up water, and along with it, small, lightweight aquatic animals like fish or frogs dwelling near the surface. That the waterspout can then travel some distance over land before it dissipates, losing energy.
And dropping its cargo.
In dropping its cargo, yes. Depositing the bewildered creatures potentially miles away from their original watery home. That's considered the most likely mechanism for many genuine reports.
Are there other explanations too?
Yes, absolutely. Another significant factor, maybe less dramatic but quite common, is simple human error or misattribution. Imagine a truck carrying fish from a hatchery overturns on a rural road during a storm, or a fishing boat spills part of its catch near the shore. People finding those fish later might easily and understandably assume they fell from the sky, especially if there was recent stormy weather.
The timing makes them jump to conclusions.
Exactly. And sometimes specific local hydrological events can play a role. In certain areas with unique geology, like underground rivers or caves connected to surface water, exceptionally heavy rain could theoretically cause pressure buildups that force water and the fear within it out onto the surface in unexpected locations, creating the appearance of a rain.
Okay, so what about Lloro, Honduras, the famous annual Lluvia de Peces? Is that water spouts every year?
Lloro is fascinating because it's become such a deeply ingrained cultural event. Each year, typically between May and July, after intense thunderstorms, the townspeople traditionally go out to collect fish, often catfish, that appear in low-lying areas or fields. For the locals, it's widely considered a miracle, a blessing, and it's celebrated with a vibrant festival.
But scientifically?
Scientifically, it's debated. Water spouts forming over nearby water bodies and traveling inland are a possible explanation. Others suggest it might be related to those local hydrological factors, perhaps flash floods washing fish out of underground streams or caves connected to nearby rivers. The National Geographic crew that visited in the 1970s, while documenting the phenomenon and the festival, actually witnessed the aftermath of fish on the ground, but they couldn't conclusively observe the exact mechanism of how they got there during the storm itself.
So still some mystery there.
Still some ambiguity. And modern commentaries further complicate the narrative. It's been pointed out that some widely circulated photos purporting to show the rain of fish in Lloro are actually documented images from unrelated events, like truck spills elsewhere in the world.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it powerfully underscores how easily myth, genuine local tradition, possible natural phenomena, and modern media misattribution can blur together, creating a captivating story that persists, perhaps resisting a single, simple, open and shut explanation.
This is truly eye-opening. You've given us so much to think about, methodically peeling back the layers on these persistent mysteries. SHC, mass die-offs, skyquakes, animal rain. Moving forward, as you, our listener, encounter new claims of the unexplained, and you surely will, I hope you'll feel more empowered to critically examine them. Use the context we've explored today. Ask yourself, what are the real, plausible mechanisms at play here? Is there a scientific explanation, maybe involving the wick effect, or algal blooms, or atmospheric ducting, or even just a truck spill that might be more likely than the initial sensational story? Approaching these things with informed curiosity, not just blind wonder, helps us move towards understanding.
The very important takeaway.
Now, let's think about how these things are viewed globally. How different do we see these phenomena around the world? Does our culture fundamentally change how we understand a boom in the night or a rain of fish from the sky? Or are our basic human reactions to the truly unexplained kind of universal?
That's a great question. While the initial human impulse to seek meaning, that sense of wonder or fear, might be fairly universal, our cultural lens profoundly shapes how we interpret these anomalies. The understanding is definitely far from universal.
How so? Give us some examples.
Well, in Western scientific cultures, the dominant tendency, at least officially, is to look for mechanistic, instrument-verified explanations. The emphasis is on empirical evidence, reproducible results, finding natural causes.
The scientific method.
Right. But, and this is fascinating, even within these cultures, folklore, true crime podcasts, mystery novels, and online communities dedicated to the unexplained remain incredibly popular. It shows this parallel, enduring appetite for the mysterious existing right alongside the scientific drive for answers. It's almost like we need both pathways, the pursuit of verifiable truth and the cultural space to explore intriguing uncertainty.
Interesting. What about other contexts?
In many indigenous and traditional religious contexts, anomalies are often situated within much broader cosmologies. They're not just isolated physical events, they might be viewed as omens, perhaps messages from ancestors, signs from deities, or even direct miracles.
So imbued with spiritual meaning.
Deeply. And these events can then be actively incorporated into community life through rites, specific ceremonies, or annual festivals like the Yoro Rain of Fish celebration we keep mentioning. They are given profound spiritual or existential significance that goes far beyond a simple meteorological or biological explanation.
And in communities with fewer resources.
In some low-resource communities, the approach can be remarkably pragmatic, sometimes combined with spiritual narratives. For instance, a rain of fish, if it happens, might be seen primarily as a welcome, direct source of food. It gets integrated into tradition and subsistence, while simultaneously being understood through embedded spiritual stories about its origin or meaning. It's both a practical resource and a potentially profound event.
And media plays a role in shaping these differences too.
Oh, hugely. Media ecosystems vary wildly across the globe and even within countries. A sensationalist tabloid or a viral social media trend can quickly transform a very localized, ambiguous oddity into a global mystery, generating widespread fear or fascination, often with minimal factual basis or context. Versus, say, local community journalism or more nuanced scientific reporting, which might take pains to preserve the ambiguities, present multiple possible explanations, and explore the complexities of the event, acknowledging both the potential scientific causes and the cultural significance without necessarily sensationalizing it. The way the story is framed initially has a massive impact.
Okay, let's step back and take a critical look at this whole field of studying anomalies.
Yeah.
What are the real strengths, the weaknesses, the overall benefits, and maybe even the hidden dangers of our collective fascination with and scientific study of these unexplained phenomena?
It's crucial to weigh those pros and cons because our relationship with the unexplained is complex and has real consequences.
Let's start with the positives. What are the strengths or benefits?
Okay, several key benefits come to mind. First, as we've touched on, anomalies often act as powerful catalysts for scientific inquiry. They challenge existing paradigms, push researchers to develop new instruments, new methods, new models. They often foster crucial cross-disciplinary collaboration, bringing together forensics, atmospheric physics, ecology, geology, psychology fields that might not otherwise interact so closely. They literally push the boundaries of our knowledge. Second, they can surface really important environmental signals. Things like unexpected mass die-offs might be the first indication of a harmful algal bloom developing, or a new pollutant entering an ecosystem, or the effects of climate stress. They can act as vital early warning systems, compelling us to investigate changes in our environment that might otherwise go unnoticed until much later. And thirdly, on a cultural level, these anomalies can create powerful community rituals and shared narratives. As we saw with Yoro, in some contexts, these events strengthen social cohesion, provide shared meaning, bind people together through a unique shared experience and interpretation. This can provide comfort, identity, and resilience.
Okay, those are compelling benefits. What about the flip side? The weaknesses and pitfalls.
There are definitely significant challenges and potential pitfalls. One major one is the constant tension between sensationalism and evidence. Media coverage, especially online, often prioritizes clicks and engagement over accuracy. Sensationalism can obscure factual information, misrepresent scientific findings, and actively hinder serious research by promoting misinformation. Viral claims, even if quickly debunked by experts, can become entrenched as common knowledge, making it incredibly hard for later, more accurate scientific corrections to gain traction. Another big pitfall is confirmation bias, which affects everyone, not just the public, but researchers too. We are all susceptible to seeking out and interpreting information in a way that confirms our pre-existing beliefs or preferred theories, whether those are scientific hypotheses or supernatural convictions. It takes conscious effort to remain objective when faced with ambiguous data. And finally, a persistent weakness is simply data scarcity. Many anomalous events are, by their nature, ephemeral. They happen quickly, unexpectedly, often in remote locations. They are poorly documented, maybe relying only on confused eyewitness accounts recorded long after the fact. This severely limits the ability to draw robust scientific inferences or conduct thorough investigations, leaving frustrating gaps that are easily filled by speculation.
And are there outright dangers associated with misinterpreting these things?
Yes, there are significant potential dangers. One is the risk of public panic or misdirected policy. Misinterpreting phenomena can have serious real-world consequences. For example, classifying mysterious booms as hostile military attacks could escalate tensions or trigger unnecessary defense spending. Attributing mass die-offs to non-existent superpathogens could cause widespread public mistrust in food supplies or lead to costly, ineffective culling programs while ignoring the real cause like pollution. Fear and misinformation can lead to poor decisions. And perhaps most critically today, there's the danger of ecological neglect. Framing serious ecological collapses, like the increasing frequency of mass mortality events, as simply mysteries or unexplained curiosities can inadvertently delay the vital acknowledgement of their underlying causes, particularly anthropogenic drivers like climate change and pollution. If we treat these as just weird stories, we might severely hinder the critical mitigation efforts and policy changes that are urgently needed to address the actual environmental crises they represent. Seeing them only as wonder can blind us to the warning.
That's a crucial balance to strike, isn't it? Between acknowledging the mystery and rigorously investigating the cause, especially when the cause might be an uncomfortable truth about our own impact. You've really helped us appreciate this complex interplay between science, culture, media, and consequence. It really encourages us all, I hope, to approach these stories with a critical, informed perspective, holding both curiosity and skepticism in hand.
That's the ideal, yes.
So, given everything we've discussed, the history, the psychology, the specific examples, the potential pitfalls, if we're truly serious about understanding these anomalies better, about moving forward productively, what concrete steps should we be taking? What should future research and societal response prioritize?
That's the crucial question. How do we improve? Based on the challenges and successes we've seen, several key priorities stand out for both scientific advancement and better societal handling of these events.
Okay, what's top of the list?
First, we urgently need to develop and implement standardized rapid response protocols for when anomalous events are reported. This means having consistent, agreed-upon, immediate procedures ready to go.
Like what specifically?
Like deploying portable acoustic logging equipment immediately when unexplained booms are reported in an area, having standardized kits and methods for water and soil sampling after unusual environmental events like potential animal rains or contamination scares, and implementing rigorous, consistent necropsy, animal autopsy protocols for mass die-offs to collect biological samples effectively. The key is immediacy and consistency to ensure valuable, perishable data is collected systematically before it's lost or degraded, which happens very quickly with many of these phenomena.
Makes sense. Get the data while it's fresh. What else?
Second, establishing comprehensive interdisciplinary databases is crucial. We need systems that can cross-link diverse information sources in near real time. Imagine connecting validated eyewitness reports with simultaneous seismograph readings, weather radar data, infrasound detections, satellite imagery, even social media sentiment analysis for that area.
Connecting all the dots.
Exactly. This comprehensive approach helps us differentiate purely coincidental patterns from potentially causal relationships. It provides a much clearer, more holistic picture than any single data stream alone, helping to narrow down possibilities and maybe even solve some long-standing puzzles.
Okay, protocols and databases. What about the public understanding aspect?
Third, we absolutely must prioritize public science literacy efforts. We need ongoing initiatives aimed at improving the general public's understanding of scientific methods, uncertainty, and common natural phenomena that can seem strange. The goal here is twofold: to reduce the spread and impact of misinformation and unfounded speculation, while simultaneously respecting the diverse cultural narratives and meanings that these events hold for different communities. It requires nuanced communication that educates without being dismissive, fostering a more informed, resilient, and less easily panicked public discourse.
A tricky balance, but essential.
Very. And finally, perhaps overarching many of these points, is the need for longitudinal ecological monitoring. We need to establish and, crucially, maintain robust, long-term programs for observing key environmental indicators and wildlife populations. This isn't just about reacting to single events, it's about understanding baseline conditions and detecting subtle trends over years or decades. This is essential for identifying slow-burn causes, understanding complex cause-effect chains, and truly grasping the anthropogenic and environmental drivers behind things like the increase in mass mortality events. It moves us beyond analyzing isolated incidents to achieving a broader systemic understanding of our planet's health and how it's changing.
Those are really powerful, concrete recommendations. It makes you consider, doesn't it, your own role perhaps in fostering a more informed approach to the unknown in your own sphere. Maybe by supporting science education or advocating for better environmental monitoring or data collection in your community. Every bit helps build that foundation for understanding.
Every bit does.
So, as we bring this deep dive to a close, it feels like the enduring power of these unexplained natural anomalies comes down to the fact that they occupy this fascinating double role in our lives.
Yeah.
They're once vital data and compelling story.
Precisely, that captures it perfectly. As data, they can signal overlooked natural processes, maybe subtle geological activity, rare atmospheric conditions, emerging ecological breakdowns, even forensic blind spots in how we investigate certain events. They push the very boundaries of our scientific understanding, forcing us to refine our instruments, our theories, our methods.
And as story.
And as story, they do something equally important. They bind communities together through shared experience and interpretation. They entertain us, captivate us in books, films, and conversations. And they provide this incredibly potent stage on which human meaning is constantly being made and remade, reflecting our deepest curiosities, our anxieties, and our fundamental need to make sense of the world and our place within it. It's this tension, this duality that makes them so endlessly fascinating.
And that tension, that interplay between the wonder they inspire and the evidence we seek, I think that's incredibly productive, isn't it?
I believe so.
It pushes science forward, demanding better instruments, clearer methods, more rigorous analysis, always seeking more definitive answers. And at the same time, it pushes our cultures to ask these profound questions. What does this mean? How should we react? What do we owe one another when the natural world behaves in ways we can't immediately explain? It's a dynamic that keeps us learning, keeps us questioning, both outwardly and inwardly.
You could almost say, mystery keeps us curious. Curiosity keeps us investigating.
I like that.
And perhaps the healthiest stance, the most productive approach, is one that is both humble and rigorous. To treat these anomalies as genuine invitations to investigate, to learn more, to delve deeper, but to actively resist the urge to prematurely turn them into unquestioned folklore, baseless speculation, or convenient dismissals. That way, they can truly teach us invaluable lessons about nature, about our societies, and ultimately about ourselves.
So here's a final thought for you to mull over as you go about your day. Consider the next unexplained event you encounter. Maybe it's a strange news report you see online, maybe it's an odd light you glimpse yourself, or an unusual sound you hear late at night. Will your immediate reaction be to jump to a simple, perhaps supernatural explanation? Or will you engage with that mystery as an invitation? An invitation to ask deeper questions, to look for evidence, to consider multiple possibilities, and to try and understand both the potential science and the powerful human stories that inevitably emerge from it. This deep dive, I hope, encourages all of us to hold both that sense of wonder and our critical thinking faculties in equal productive measure.
Well said.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the strange and fascinating world of unexplained natural phenomena. Keep asking questions and continue your own journey of informed curiosity.